Look at your neighbor and tell them, this is not another year. No, this is not business as usual. This is not survival mode. This is not barely making it. 2026 is the year that everything changes for you. You didn't walk into this room by accident. You didn't survive what tried to kill you just to repeat the same cycle. You didn't cry those tears, fight those battles, and endure that pressure just to stay the same. Something is shifting, and it's shifting for you. I came to announce to somebody who almost quit, somebody who got tired of waiting, somebody who questioned God in the midnight hour. The delay was not denial. The struggle was not punishment. The pain was not wasted. God has been preparing you in private for a public turnaround. 2026 is not about luck. It's not about coincidence. It's about alignment. When you align your faith, your obedience, and your courage, everything has to change. And if you can receive it, shout out loud, this is my year. You cannot step into 2026 carrying a 2025 mindset, because the thinking that helped you survive last season is not the thinking required to conquer the next one. Some of you had to become cautious just to make it through. You learned how to protect yourself, how to stay quiet, how to expect less so you wouldn't be disappointed again. That mindset kept you alive, but it was never meant to keep you there. God did not preserve you just so you could manage pain. He preserved you so you could manifest purpose. There are habits you formed out of necessity that now stand in the way of destiny. You learned how to settle, how to tolerate, how to endure what you were never meant to embrace. And now God is saying the season has shifted, but your thinking hasn't caught up yet. You're praying for new doors while still thinking like you're locked out. You're asking for overflow while still budgeting your faith for scarcity. You're believing God for more, but expecting Him to move the way He did before. What worked in 2025 will not work in 2026 because the assignment has changed. You are no longer in a season of maintenance. You are in a season of expansion. Expansion demands vision. Expansion demands risk. Expansion demands that you start asking, what if it fails? And start asking, what if it works? The old mindset says, play it safe. The new mindset says, trust God and move forward. The old mindset says, wait until everything is perfect. The new mindset says, step out while it's still uncertain. Some of you are still thinking like a survivor when God is calling you to think like a builder. Survivors focus on getting through the day. Builders focus on creating the future. Survivors celebrate small relief. Builders pursue lasting transformation. You've been thanking God for just enough when He's been trying to introduce you to more than enough. But your mind has to be renewed before your life can be transformed. You cannot receive new instructions with an old perspective. God is not changing His promises. He is challenging your posture. He's asking you to stand taller, believe bigger, and expect greater. The limits you've accepted were never from God. They were born from disappointment, betrayal, and unanswered prayers. But 2026 is not asking you to remember what hurt you. It's asking you to remember who you are. You are not who your last season tried to reduce you to. You are not the mistake, the failure, the delay, or the rejection. You are becoming who God said you would be. And that requires letting go of the mindset that says, this is as good as it gets. No, this is the year you think differently, believe boldly, and move decisively. Because when your mind changes, your choices change. When your choices change, your direction changes. And when your direction changes, everything else has no choice but to follow. What tried to break you did not come to destroy you. It came to develop you. The enemy thought the pressure would crush you, but God knew the pressure would shape you. Every sleepless night, every silent tear, every moment you wondered how you would make it through was working something into you that comfort never could. You didn't just endure the storm. You learned how to stand in it. And now you're stronger in ways you didn't even realize while you were hurting. Some of you are still looking at your past as proof of damage, but God is looking at it as evidence of growth. You call it trauma. Heaven calls it training. You call it loss. God calls it room for expansion. If it hadn't been for the weight you carried, you wouldn't have discovered the strength you possessed. You had no idea you could pray like that, fight like that, believe like that, until life forced it out of you. The struggle revealed the warrior that comfort kept hidden. There were moments when you felt stripped, exposed, and undone. But stripping is never about humiliation in the hands of God. It's about preparation. Before God elevates you, he removes what cannot go with you. He separates you from dependencies that would fail you in the next season. He teaches you how to stand without applause, how to trust without guarantees, how to move without validation. The breaking you experienced was not abandonment. It was alignment. You were being built for weight you hadn't carried yet, built to handle influence without losing integrity, built to manage success without forgetting who you are, built to walk into rooms that once intimidated you with confidence rooted in God, not ego. If God had promoted you before the process, the blessing would have crushed you. So he let the pressure prepare you instead. What hurt you also taught you discernment. You see differently now. You hear differently now. You don't fall for the same traps, the same words, the same patterns. You learn the difference between connection and attachment, between loyalty and convenience. That wisdom came at a price, but it will save you in the future. The pain gave you clarity, and clarity is protection. Don't minimize what you survived. You didn't just make it through. You came out refined. The fire burned off what was unnecessary and left what was essential. You're more grounded, more prayerful, more resilient. You don't panic the way you used to. You don't quit the way you used to. You don't fold under pressure the way you used to. That's not accidental. That's evidence of growth. The very thing that tried to break you positions you. It qualified you for what's coming next. You have the endurance, the maturity, and the faith required for the shift ahead. So stop looking back with shame or regret. Lift your head and recognize the truth. You are not damaged goods. You are processed, prepared, and positioned. And now, in 2026, what once tried to defeat you will become the foundation of your victory. Obedience will take you places your talent can never carry you, because talent may open doors, but obedience keeps you in rooms you didn't qualify for on paper. There are spaces God wants to bring you into that your RA Summe cannot explain. You don't have the connections, the background, or the advantages others have, yet favor will make room for you when obedience becomes your lifestyle. God is not impressed by how gifted you are if you won't follow his voice when it challenges your comfort. Talent shines when things are easy, but obedience shows up when instructions don't make sense. It shows up when God tells you to let go of what you love, move before you feel ready, speak when silence feels safer, or wait when every part of you wants to rush ahead. Obedience is costly because it demands trust without full understanding. It requires you to believe that God sees what you can't and knows what you don't. And in that surrender, heaven responds. Some of you have been praying for elevation while resisting instruction. You want God to bless what he's been trying to correct. But obedience is alignment, and alignment unlocks authority. When you obey, you step into a flow where doors open without forcing, protection surrounds you without explanation, and provision shows up without stress. You stop pushing so hard because you're being carried by purpose instead of pressure. There were moments when obedience felt like loss. Walking away from people you loved, saying no to opportunities that looked good but weren't God, choosing integrity when compromise would have paid faster. Those decisions were not delays, they were investments. You were sowing seeds into a future you couldn't yet see. And God never forgets obedience that costs you something. He keeps record of every time you chose him over convenience. Obedience also trains your spirit to recognize God's voice more clearly. The more you obey, the more sensitive you become to direction. You stop needing dramatic signs because discernment becomes your guide. You move with confidence, not because you have all the answers, but because you trust the one giving instructions. That confidence changes how you walk, how you speak, how you decide. You're no longer driven by fear of missing out, but by faith in God's timing. What obedience produces cannot be replicated by skill. Skill can impress people, but obedience attracts favor. Skill can take you far, but obedience takes you deep. deep into purpose, deep into peace, deep into authority, you begin to realize that success without obedience is exhausting, but success through obedience is sustaining. You're not burned out because you're not carrying what God never asked you to hold. In 2026, obedience will distinguish you. While others rely on connections, strategy, and self-promotion, you will move by instruction. And when God opens a door for you, no one will be able to close it because it wasn't opened by human approval. It was unlocked by obedience. You won't have to explain how you got there. You'll just know this truth. You didn't get here by talent alone. You got here because you trusted God enough to obey. This is the year you stop delaying your calling, because delay has never been about timing alone. It has been about fear disguised as wisdom. You told yourself you were waiting for the right moment, but deep down you were waiting to feel ready, confident, certain. And the truth is, ready is a feeling that rarely comes before obedience. God does not call the prepared. He prepares the called along the way. If you wait until you feel qualified, you will miss the very season designed to qualify you. There are assignments God placed in your spirit years ago that you've kept on pause. You buried them under responsibility, disappointment, and self-doubt. Life happened, people left, plans failed, and somewhere along the way you started shrinking what God told you to do so it would fit your comfort level. But calling doesn't expire because of delay. It waits. And the longer it waits, the heavier it becomes. That restlessness you feel is not confusion, it's purpose knocking, asking to be released. Fear has been convincing you that starting now means starting late. But late in your eyes is still right on time in God's plan. Moses was delayed. David was delayed. Esther was delayed. Their stories didn't begin when they were comfortable. They began when they were courageous. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's movement in spite of it. And God is not asking you to leap. He's asking you to step. One step of obedience can unlock years of waiting. You've been worried about failing publicly, but you've been dying privately. You've been more afraid of embarrassment than of regret. Yet regret is far more dangerous than failure. Failure teaches, sharpens, redirects. Regret lingers, whispering about what could have been if you had trusted God sooner. This is the year you choose growth over comfort, obedience over excuses, and movement over hesitation. Stop disqualifying yourself with comparisons. You keep looking at people who started earlier, moved faster, and seem further ahead. But their journey is not your assignment. God measures progress by obedience, not speed. What matters is not when you start relative to others, but whether you start when God says move. The grace on your life is customized, and when you step into your lane, acceleration will meet you there. Delaying your calling does not protect you from opposition. It only postpones impact. The resistance you're afraid of will come whether you move or not. The difference is when you move in obedience, you're covered. You're strengthened. You're supported by grace. God never sends you without equipping you, and He never assigns you without anointing you. What you need will meet you in motion. This year, you stop negotiating with your purpose. You stop waiting for permission you were never meant to need. You stop asking yourself if you are capable and start trusting that God is faithful, because the calling on your life is not optional. It is necessary. People are waiting on the version of you that only obedience can unlock. And when you finally move, you'll realize the delay wasn't because God was holding back. It was because you were. But today, that ends. God is about to restore what you thought was lost, not as a return to the past, but as a revelation of His faithfulness in the present. Restoration is not God giving you back yesterday exactly the way it was. It is God redeeming what yesterday took from you and reintroducing it with purpose. What you mourned, what you grieved, what you assumed was gone forever has been held in the hands of a God who specializes in recovery beyond expectation. Some of you lost time. You look back and wonder how many years slipped through your fingers while you were surviving, healing, or simply trying to make it through. But God is not bound by calendars or clocks. He is the Redeemer of time. He can compress years of growth into a single season of obedience. What felt wasted will suddenly make sense when momentum meets maturity. You will realize you were not late. You were being prepared. Others lost joy. Life became heavy, responsibilities piled up, and laughter felt irresponsible in the face of pressure. You learned how to function without feeling, how to smile without celebrating. But God never intended for joy to be a luxury. It is your strength, and He is restoring your capacity to feel again, to dream again, to rejoice without guilt. The same God who carried you through grief is now teaching you how to live with gladness. Some lost confidence. Rejection chipped away at how you saw yourself. Failure made you question your worth. Words spoken over you settled into your spirit and rewrote your inner dialogue. But God is restoring your identity. He is reminding you that your value was never determined by outcomes or opinions. What you lost in self-belief will be replaced with assurance rooted in truth. You will stand taller, speak clearer, and move forward without apology. There are relationships God is restoring, not always by bringing people back, but by healing the part of you that was wounded by their absence. Restoration is not always reconciliation. Sometimes it is release with peace. God removes the sting so the memory no longer controls you. You stop reliving what hurt you and start living for what's ahead. That is restoration at its deepest level. Provision is also part of restoration. What was drained financially, emotionally, and spiritually is being replenished. You will see doors open that make no logical sense. Resources will appear at the right moment, not early enough to make you dependent, but right on time to prove God's faithfulness. You will understand that scarcity was a season, not a sentence. When God restores, He does it with interest. You won't just recover, you'll overflow. You'll have wisdom where you once had confusion, peace where you once had anxiety, stability where you once had chaos. And the best part is this: you will be able to testify that it was nobody but God, not your strategy, not your strength, not your connections, just grace. So lift your head and open your hands. What you thought was lost was only hidden. What you thought was over was only paused. And in 2026, God is not just restoring things, He is restoring you. Everything begins to change the moment you decide to believe again, because belief is not passive. It is a choice you make in the face of uncertainty. Somewhere along the way, disappointment trained you to lower your expectations. You learned how to hope cautiously, pray quietly, and dream in moderation so it wouldn't hurt as much if things didn't work out. But guarded faith is not faith at all. It is survival wearing a spiritual disguise. God is calling you back to belief that stretches you, challenges you, and requires trust beyond logic. Believing again does not mean pretending the pain never happened. It means refusing to let pain have the final word. You've seen prayers go unanswered, doors close, and promises seem delayed. You've believed before and felt let down. So this time, belief feels risky, but faith has always been risky. It has never been about certainty. It has always been about surrender, and surrender is where power flows. The moment you choose to believe again, heaven responds, not because your belief is perfect, but because it is sincere. God is not waiting for polished faith. He is waiting for willing faith. Faith that says, I don't understand it, but I trust you. Faith that says, I've been disappointed, but I'm still open. Faith that says, I've been broken, but I'm not done. That kind of belief shifts atmospheres. Belief reactivates vision. When you stop believing, your world shrinks. You stop seeing possibilities and start managing limitations. But when belief returns, perspective changes. You begin to see opportunity where you once saw obstacles. You see purpose where you once saw pain. You see potential where you once saw endings. Nothing around you may change immediately, but something within you does. And that internal shift eventually alters everything external. Believing again also restores movement. Unbelief paralyzes. It keeps you stuck in overthinking, hesitation, and delay, but belief produces action. You take the step, you make the call, you apply again, you try again, not because you're guaranteed success, but because belief refuses to let fear decide your future. Action fueled by faith creates momentum, and momentum invites God into motion. When you believe again, you stop asking God to prove Himself before you trust Him. You trust Him because of who He is, not because of what you see. That trust deepens your relationship with God. You're no longer following him only when it's convenient or clear. You're walking with him even when the path feels uncertain. That kind of faith matures you. It anchors you. In 2026, belief will be your turning point. Not the absence of struggle, not the perfection of circumstances, but the decision to trust God again. When you believe, doors begin to open. When you believe, courage rises. When you believe, resilience strengthens. And when you believe, everything else starts aligning. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to feel fearless. You just need to believe again, because belief is the trigger. And once it's pulled, change is no longer optional. It is inevitable. So I dare you to stand in this moment and declare it with your chest and your faith wide open. 2026 is not repeating my past. It is rewriting my story. I refuse to shrink. I refuse to delay, and I refuse to doubt what God has already decided. The struggle didn't stop me. The pain didn't break me, and the waiting didn't waste me. I'm stepping forward with obedience, believing again, and expecting restoration. And when I move, heaven moves with me. If you receive it, lift your voice and shout it loud. This is the year everything changes for me.